I've been trying to get it going for about 8 years. So I told Steve about it about 5 years ago, and he said, "Don't let anyone else draw that." And I said, "Well, stop drawing for Marvel so you can do it, you know, or at least get a break so we can do it." So yeah, I've been like, my notebook for it has been building up for 5 or 6 years. So yeah, it's something I've been wanting to get to.
Well, it's an attempt to do something a little different. It's a spy story, but it's a different spy story than we're used to, it seems.
It is.
At least a different lead character.
Yeah, I felt like I wanted to take that classic, you know, especially that era from like, I mean, all the James Bond movies that we all love. I mean, we love Casino Royale, right? But the Sean Connery Bond era is everyone of my generation's favorite Bond, kind of. Though I will argue for On Her Majesty's Secret Service. You know,
it's a very underrated movie.
It is. The action in that one. If Connery had been in, if they had ever had action that good in a Connery movie, it would be amazing. Because Connery's action is like, I'm going to do a judo throw. But I wanted to take something from that era, or like the In Like Flynn, and you know, all that stuff, and sort of do like a metatextual take on that. And I thought the best way into that story would be through the secretary character, or the Moneypenny-esque kind of, you know, all those movies always have like a girl sidekick. And I thought, what if the girl sidekick was actually the star of the show? And you know,
it puts everything in a very different perspective.
It really does.
Action hero.
Yeah, especially, and the book takes place. It opens in 1973, and two things were happening in 1973: the Women's Revolution and Watergate. And you know, and English politics were changing. The world was changing at that era, and I thought it would be a really interesting time to put a female lead into the Cold War.
Well, having a female lead, having action adventure,
yeah,
you know, it puts a whole different spin on the sexual aspect of it too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll think of Bond with his girls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was like, I always wonder what happens to the Bond girls when he leaves. Like, Bond seduces a woman, she gives up all of her country's secrets that her husband knows, and then he blows up, you know, a factory and leaves. And I'm like, what happens to that lady? She's probably in prison or on death row or hung. So I was like, what if we went into some of those kind of Mission Impossible scenarios? Like, what happens when Mission Impossible leaves? And it's like, well, you've deposed a dictator, and now the whole country's in chaos. I wanted to like deal with blowback in that kind of scenario, because in real life, intelligence operations are filled with blowback, actually. But we never get to see what happens after Mission Impossible or James Bond or any of those things is over.
Or Captain America.
Or Captain America, exactly. You never go back after Captain America has been there. Yeah, exactly. So
this has obviously been percolating in your mind for a while.
Yeah, a long time. Well, my dad and my uncle were both in the intelligence field. My uncle was sort of a high-up guy in the CIA in the 60s and 70s, and my dad was one of the heads of naval intelligence in Vietnam. And yeah, so he's so I grew up with that world, you know, and I love espionage stories. I love, you know, spy movies and stuff, but I also love reading like John le Carré, like the really realistic kind of stuff. So I wanted to try to find a way to merge those two. And in a comic book, it's great because we can do these big action sequences, but I wanted to do like those kind of huge action sequences with really hardcore physical results. It won't be like Sin City where someone leaps off a rooftop and lands on a car 6 floors below and doesn't break a bone in their body. It's like, you know, when people get shot in the face in this, they die, and that's it. Dead is dead.
Dead is dead. Bucky wasn't dead. It's an interesting contrast. It's an interesting contrast, though. I mean, you feel like you're kind of moving to a different phase, kind of now taking on themes in a different way anyway. I want to say a deeper way necessarily.
Well, not deeper. Well, I'm really proud of all the stuff we did on Captain America and with the Winter Soldier and stuff. But you know, you're operating in that world where, you know, where death isn't permanent and where you can add new things. And I think we brought a level of realism to that world. But Steve and I both talked about it, and we wanted to try to take what we did to another level. We don't just want to repeat what we did on Captain America with a different character. We want to try and push ourselves. He's pushing me to do more inventive stuff with the writing, and I'm pushing him to try to, you know, keep being amazing at what he does. But, you know, we're able to have, you know, moments in the book that will have, you know, 15, 16 panels a page, and where we get really into character background and stuff. And we'll be jumping around in time a lot. The book takes place, you know, it goes all the way back to the 40s on some stuff, like flashbacks for some of the various characters in it. The guy who runs the agency was like a spy during World War II, and so there's a lot of really amazing stuff that I've been doing Cold War research, especially for the last year since I knew we were actually going to do the book finally. I've been just reading nonfiction, Cold War, spy, and talking to as many, people in the actual field as I can. I want to get as much as I can. I'd like to get the like spycraft correct. Mm-hmm. I want to do like actual dead drops the way they really happen and things like that. I want to actually deal with that world, but then take it to that heightened reality too, because it's more fun that way. Because real spy work is mostly boring.
Right, but the pages that were in the Image Next book are spectacular.
Yeah,
They're full of action and adventure
exactly.
too.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be. It's gonna be. I want, when we have those moments, I want them to just be explosive, and we might even have a double-page spread, which I'm against now because, well, they take up so much space, but we have more pages, so I'm okay with it. But in a 20-page book, when I see a double-page spread, I'm like, are you kidding me?
But, I mean, your books, as much as anyone's, people are reading them in the trades also.
Yeah, exactly.
You're writing for perpetuity, and that splash has an impact.
Yeah,
Two-page spread has an impact.
Yeah, it does. I feel like, I'm more of a print guy than a digital guy, and double-page spreads work really good in a single-issue comic.
Yeah. And
all my friends who are like, digital's the future, then keep putting double-page spreads in their books, and if I'm trying to read them on my iPad, I have to blow, and it's like, that takes me out of the experience. I'm like, if you think digital's the future, stop doing double-page spreads. Mm-hmm. But that's another point. That has nothing to do with us. Yeah.
But you get to work with some amazing artists. Steve's work looked amazing and just incredible on that. Obviously on Fatale also.
Yeah.
I mean, you've just been really...
I feel very lucky. Steve Epting, Sean Phillips, and Michael Lark I've worked with a lot. Butch Geis. I finally got to work with Steve McNiven, which was amazing. I don't think I would have ever put the Ameridroid in a comic if it wasn't Steve McNiven drawing it, because I'm like, a giant Captain America robot that thinks it's Captain America has to fight the actual Captain America. It's like, Brian Hitch could have pulled that off, or Steve McNiven, and that was it.
I have such a weakness for that character.
Oh, I know, he's so tragic.
Right, exactly. And just so random too. Just like those few
exactly.
issues, just so that weird run after Kirby and before John Byrne took over. And
I know, I kind of love that weird era where they kept changing writers every 3 issues and trying to figure out Cap's origin and getting it wrong. Oh, there's Stan Lee. Speaking of Captain America, his first piece of writing that was ever published was a text piece in issue 2 of Captain America. So why do I know that?
Because you love this stuff.
Because I'm a comic book nerd. Yeah, exactly.
So Fatale, I know, is doing really well. You're moving around different eras too. I know you mentioned at Image Expo that she might do. You're moving into a punk rock based issue, which is near your heart.
Sort of punk grunge era. Yeah, the current one takes place in '90s Seattle, sort of in the year after Kurt Cobain died, when the town starts falling apart, kind of, and the music scene starts dying. And I thought it'd be really interesting to drop Josephine into that era with amnesia. So she has no idea who she is or what she can do, and she moves into a house with a one-hit wonder failed grunge rock band, which, interestingly enough, one of my closest friends was in a one-hit wonder band in Seattle in the 90s. So
I always wonder what happened to the one-hit wonder guys. You watch those shows on VH1 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. They're not on any of those, thank God. They still make okay money on their one hit. But yeah, it's interesting. I talked to him a lot about it because I was like, I want to know what happened. You know? So yeah, I'm trying to sort of put that into the story too, and it's been a lot of fun because some of the characters are based on old friends of mine, and I got permission. I was like, I'm not guaranteeing that you'll die, but if you die, it's going to be ugly. Is that okay? And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Being a Seattle guy myself too, I'm looking forward to seeing the city.
Oh yeah, I know. I've got Sean's actually. I feel like Sean and Betty are actually capturing at least the essence of it. And Sean, I've been sending photo reference. So Dick's Drive-In on Capitol Hill is in issue 16, and it looks exactly like it.
Oh, nice.
I was like, oh my God, that's perfect. And Betty colored it perfect without. I'm not even sure she knew. Maybe she looked at the reference photo too. It's got the orange and it's got the red brick building right behind it that used to have the Broadway video.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I used to rent, Jason Lutz and I used to go there and rent Nintendos. We would get the Super Nintendo and Chrono Trigger.
Nice, nice. Now, is that series going to keep going, or does that have an end at some point?
Fatale does have an end. I know where it's ending. I'm not 100% sure when it's ending, and Sean and I are kicking around ideas for what we're going to do afterwards. He and I both really want to do a sci-fi noir at some point, like a sort of Blade Runner-esque kind of thing. So we've been talking about that for a few years, and I also have an idea for a 40s era mystery story.
I've never read sci-fi from you. Other than the Marvel stuff, have you done sci-fi work?
I've done bits here and there. I'm a big fan of the genre. I have I'm not one of those like obsessive sci-fi or fantasy guys, but I have, I've read pretty much all the Philip K. Dick books, and I went through a big phase in my late teens and early 20s where I was doing nothing but reading like awesome sci-fi books. So it's always been there in the back of my mind, and the Donald Sutherland Invasion of the Body Snatchers movie is one of my top movies of all time. So I've always wanted to do some kind of that. I mean, that feels like a noir film, because what worse noir thing could happen than you end up being taken over by aliens.
Well, the original really is a classic noir.
Yeah, and the original ending of the original one is so good because he's just running down the highway.
Oh my God, it's just devastating.
But you can only see that on now it's on the DVDs and stuff. But then in the Sutherland one, there's a scene where that same guy, the actor, actually runs up to Donald Sutherland's window on a car, and then he runs around the corner and gets killed by aliens. And Philip Kaufman did that on purpose because he wanted you to think that he'd been running for 22 years. So yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, you've had a long career in comics. You must be excited to really move away from Marvel. I don't want to say, I don't put it that way, but kind of follow your own vision, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I got to the point. I had a really good time at DC, and I left when it was starting to not be as much fun for me, and Marvel offered me Captain America, so I went over there, and I had a great time doing that, and I feel like it really helped my career doing all that stuff. And a lot of the stuff I did at DC now is more popular than when we were actually doing it. I signed more Gotham Centrals this year than I've ever signed. Like, Gotham Central is bigger now than it was when we were doing it, and but yeah, I got to a point where I feel like when I started, I was always trying to figure out a way to make the superhero comics not feel superhero-y. That's why Gotham Central happened. Greg and I both wanted to write a cop book, and we thought, what if we did cops in Gotham City? And we could do our version of Homicide. People always keep saying we were inspired by The Wire, and I was like, no, we were out like 2 or 3 years before The Wire.
Right.
But
Daredevil also.
But Daredevil,
didn't feel like a superhero
Daredevil,
series?
yeah, exactly. So that's been the way that I really built my name in the field, and I think I got to a point where I was getting assigned bigger and bigger books for them that I felt like weren't really in my wheelhouse as much, but I wanted to do it, and I was on contract. But I got kind of tired of doing superhero comics. I don't know, I probably wrote about 600 of them or 700 of them, and I think I just felt like that was enough, at least for a while. I have some ideas for some stuff here and there now and then. I never got to write an arc of The Punisher or Spider-Man, which were 2 of my favorites, but at the same time, I'm having so much fun doing my own things, and it's so nice to only be doing 2 books, just schedule-wise, because it then leaves me time, because I've been doing a lot of screenwriting, and I wrote a couple TV pilots last year, and so it's nice to have a couple weeks a month where I can do other stuff, or even just sit around and watch movies or read books.
What a concept, right?
Yeah, I was doing 6 scripts a month for 6 or 7 years, because we were doing double shipping, and so that really. I'm not a kid anymore, and when you're working that hard, you can't even appreciate the success to some degree, because my vacations, until last year, I hadn't taken a vacation that wasn't to a comic convention in my entire career. So that was like, I think my honeymoon was like 3 days.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly.